Hello, everyone, and welcome to Student Economists, where choosing to spend your time here is infinitely better than the opportunity cost. Okay, so right now we have a Cape Economics paper, paper 2, unit 1, and this is year 2021. Let's begin. So, the first question says to define the term production possibility frontier and state how it illustrates the concept of scarcity. So, production possibility frontier is a diagrammatic depiction of the maximum of different combinations of two types of goods that a country produces in its theoretical economy. Furthermore, scarcity refers to the inequality that exists between unlimited human desires or wants and the limited finite nature of scarce resources. The PPF illustrates scarcity as along the frontier boundary. It shows the maximum combinations of both goods, which indicates the resources for both goods are limited, despite the fact that society would want an unlimited production of both goods. So furthermore, you can kind of bring out that example with, for example, two goods like education and healthcare. Despite the fact that, we have limited resources in terms of teachers, in terms of doctors, in terms of the supplies needed for both industries, we'd want to produce an unlimited amount, because we can't get enough education, we can't get enough healthcare, but resources are limited. So you can also enhance your explanation with that type of thing. Moving on to B, APB Motors is a car rental company. The following table shows the company's data points from its operations. So right here we have rental fees on the left and numbers of cars rented on the right. And from this, you kind of see that the law of demand is showing. As you increase the price, the quantity demanded decreases. So the rental fee really shows the price, while the number of cars rented would really show the quantity demanded. So right here we have the first one, which is calculate the price elasticity of demand when rental fee increases from $1,250 to $1,400. So right here we start off with our formula, right? So price elasticity of demand is equal to the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. This is the first method that is the one, this method, and you also have the arc method, but we're using this method right now. And to get the percentage change of each one, it's new minus old over old times 100. So the the percentage change in quantity demanded would go from new, which is 55, because this is the new price, so this is the new quantity. So new quantity would be 55, and then you minus 78, which is the old quantity, over the old quantity. So we'd end up with negative 23 over 78 times 100, and that when we finish calculating that, that would give us negative 29.49%. And we do the percentage change in price as well, which would give us we'd start with the new one, which is 1,400 minus 1,250 over 1,250. I should put times 100 right here, but down here I have it. So yes, the difference is 150. We put that over 1,250 times 100, we get 12%. So now when you get to your price elasticity of demand now, you're gonna just put these figures over each other, and you're going to get negative 2.46. But for price elasticity of demand, please note that the sign doesn't really matter in that regard. I mean, you can say that the minus sign does show that the law of demand is present, but it has no interpretation like in YED or in cross elasticity of demand. Yeah, there's no interpretation for the negative sign, so don't worry about that. So now, based on the price elasticity of demand calculated in B1, suggests with reasons whether the owners of the APB motors should increase or decrease their rental fees. So let's just quickly analyze it. The price elasticity of demand is 2.46, right? So that means that it is highly elastic. If price elasticity is greater than 1, it is highly elastic, right? So as I have here, with price elasticity being 2.46, it is interpreted to be highly elastic, highly price elastic. APB motor owners should now opt to reduce their rental fees. So remember, with price elasticity of demand, when you have a highly elastic demand, that means that the percentage change in quantity demanded is proportionately greater than the percentage change in price, which means that if you change the price ever so slightly, let's say you change it by 2%, there's a 2% increase in the price. That means that there will be a, a greater, maybe 20% change in quantity demanded. So if so to speak, if you increase your price by 2%, you will have a 20% decrease in your quantity demanded. So obviously, you wouldn't want to go about, increasing the price. You want to probably flip it the other way, where you decrease your price by like 5% and you end up with a 20% increase in quantity demanded, right? Because remember, with a good being highly elastic, it means that whatever the change is in price, there will be a much greater change proportionate in quantity demanded. So this is why I went with saying that they should reduce the rental fees. So I go on to say this is so as a highly elastic PED figure of 2.6 indicates that the quantity demanded QD, or buyers of vehicles from APV motors have a proportionately greater percentage change response to a lower rise in price. In other words, the PED suggests that too many consumers will opt to purchase or find substitutes for APB motors if they raise the rental fees. And then I give the counter argument, but if the rental, no, sorry, but if the rental fees were lowered, then there will be a proportionately higher increase in quantity demanded to the proportionately smaller decrease in rental fees, thus increasing APB Motors' total revenues and also leading to more total expenditure from the consumer side. So, yeah, let's move on. So, the table shows the market schedule for a given good, right? So we have the price, we have the quantity demanded, and we have the quantity supplied. So from this diagram, we can obviously tell that we're going to create some type of market equilibrium graph, right? And it says, with the aid of a fully labeled diagram, analyze the impact of a price floor of $700 on this market. In your response, include a definition of the term price floor. So I do have to confess I did not completely do the diagram, in the sense that there is no title right here, but ensure to put a title. But I have to some extent, done some shortcuts. I haven't labeled my x-axis fully, but it's just essentially to just get the gist of what should be there. So what definitely should be there is your demand curve, your supply curve, your price floor, and essentially the units that are really important to the explanation. So we're talking about your market equilibrium right here, and then we're talking about the two figures that you extrapolate from your price floor. Alright? So let's begin. So a price floor refers to the minimum price stipulated by law that producers are obligated to charge for a good or service. It is usually established at a price point above the market equilibrium. Um, Minimum price floors are often used in the labor market when setting minimum wage, but its main purpose is to protect producers from the adverse effects of market instability, right? And in the diagram illustrated, the price floor is established at $700, which is above the market equilibrium of 500. When utilizing an industry for a particular good, like for example mangoes, the price floor has the effect of creating a surplus. So as you can see right here, guys, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded at $700. Right, so that's a surplus. Okay, so in the instance above, we can see that the surplus is self-evident. I just showed you guys, as the quantity supplied of 1900 or 19,000 units is greater than the quantity demanded of 11,000 units, creating a surplus of 8,000 units. In an industry like mangoes, for instance, the surplus, however, may put the suppliers in a worse spot as they have the excess supply of perishable mangoes which they are unable to earn any revenue on, as the consumers are not willing to purchase all of that excess at that higher price. This excess could be exported to underdeveloped countries in the hopes of selling it there, but overall it may still be too expensive, which means that producers will have to incur a loss. However, it must be noted that the surplus of the price floor may be worthwhile to the producers if the government is willing to purchase the excess mangoes at this higher price floor, which results in more profits. Please note though that this instance that I put at the bottom is really for a guaranteed price. So guaranteed price are essentially, it works much like a price floor where the government is obligated to, essentially the government wants you to get like a surplus. They want a surplus so they can like have it to store for like in times of wars, etc. But really this only applies for a guaranteed price. I just gave that there to kind of show that we're discussing the for and against part of it. But yes, um for guaranteed prices, those are the ones that the government wants the surplus to happen and they will buy the surplus. So you can see how a price floor in like a regular industry can actually be not so good. I mean, it can work out if the amount of money gained from just the quantity demanded is still greater than what you were working with before at the market equilibrium. But yeah, otherwise it still works out poorly because there's a surplus that you're unable to sell. Okay, let's move on. So this is a definition section, module 2. Define each of the following terms. Economic loss. Economic loss refers to the situation where the firm's average costs exceed the average revenue generated. So you're talking about AC is greater than AR. Um, Abnormal profits. So abnormal profit has multiple synonyms. So it can be seen as economic profit, abnormal profit, supernormal profit, or windfall profit. So these profits refer to any type of profit in excess of normal profit. In other terms, the firm's average revenues must exceed the average costs accrued. So I have here AR is greater than AC. Distinguish between private benefits and external benefits. So, private benefits are the direct benefits or satisfaction immediate consumers derive from consuming a good. This is measured in monetary terms, that is, the amount of money that consumers are willing to pay for, pay, let's go, willing to pay for this good or service. I don't know. Oh, this same good or service. Okay. On the other hand, external benefits refer to the spillover benefits due to the production of a good or service experienced by the unrelated third party members of society. So essentially, private benefits are, it's just your own satisfaction. It's what you derive from the goods. So you go to the shop and buy this you buy this packet of chocolate, right? And essentially just from that chocolate you derive that satisfaction, and that satisfaction is shown through the amount of money you paid for it. So as we know from the marginal utility theory, that is what your price is, essentially equal to your marginal utility, which is your way of showing your satisfaction. However, external benefits now, those are like the spillover benefits due to the production of the good or service experienced by the unrelated third party. So this is like, for instance, you buy a radio, and their satisfaction is shown by the fact that you paid this amount of money for the radio. However, now, and that satisfaction is your private benefit. That's directly what you get from consuming the good. But then when you go home, you play the music, and then you consume it, and you satisfy from that. But now, if the music is loud enough, for example, somebody to walk past your house, and the music is nice music that everybody likes, that is the external benefit, that spillover benefit due to the production of that good or service to unrelated third parties. Weird example, but yes, that's how you can distinguish between private and external benefits. Moving on, explain what is meant by the term merit good and state an example of a merit good. So merit goods refer to a commodity, that is a good or service, that is provided by the state to individuals in society based on merit or need. So merit goods are also goods and services that generate spillover benefits due to positive externalities experienced by the unrelated third party to the production process. And additionally, merit goods are often underproduced and underconsumed. So these merit goods are things like healthcare, education, things that have very good overall net benefit and welfare to society, but they're often underproduced and underconsumed because most times they are produced by private individuals, and obviously they have the profit motive, and people would be restricted by the high prices. So for education, you can always look at how college tuition is always so high. That's a good way of thinking about it for merit goods. So yeah, further on, I say this is so as merit goods have a net positive impact on society, as the social marginal benefit (SMB) far exceeds the social marginal cost (SMC). So, and then I have SMB is greater than SMC. An example of a merit good is public health care, which generates the positive externalities of a healthier population, which leads to lower mortality rates, which is an overall benefit to society. Less mortality, more people alive. With more people alive, you can get more production. Yeah, things of that nature. You can continue continue from that. But yes, moving on. Consider this excerpt. Each CARICOM state derives various levels of economic and socio-economic benefits from its respective coastal and marine fishery resources, some of which are shared. Currently, most states allow open access on their fisheries. There is no agreement among the countries pertaining to the accessing of the region's fishery resources, in particular those that are shared. The continuation of such uncoordinated open access to these resources, despite regulated fishing in some states, could lead to overfishing and severe resource depletion. It would also result in reduced harvest levels, triggering food and nutrition insecurity and lower export earnings. Okay. discuss how Caribbean governments could use each of the following measures to control the externalities arising from fishing, overfishing. So right here they want us to talk about legislation, talk about taxation, and quotas. Okay, so for me, whenever I do these questions, you always have to bring out as much economic concepts as possible. So we're not gonna just talk about externalities. We're also gonna relate it to market failure because this is market failure because we're looking at the open access, which is also a cause of market failure. Open access to resources. So overall access to resources. Sorry, that's a cause of market failure as well. So this is a market failure question. So we need to tie in the definition of market failure always. So market failure refers to the inability of the price mechanism to effectively allocate the economy's scarce resources, or where the operations of the market forces of supply and demand lead to net welfare loss. So right here we talk about, then we jump into the externalities. So externalities is also a cause of market failure. So, externalities in particular, negative externalities, refer to the spillover cost incurred by the unrelated third parties, often due to the overproduction of a certain good or service. And in our case, the Caribbean governments are tasked with the mitigation of the adverse effects that stem from the negative externalities of overfishing. Overfishing as an activity causes various externalities which can be controlled by the employment of the measures of legislation, taxation, and quotas. So you see, we tie in everything in the first intro type of thing that we're doing here. And then we're going to say legislation. We define legislation. Legislation refers to the use of legal means to enforce certain standards reasonable men of society are obligated to uphold. Okay. And so with the issue of overfishing, they can correct this market failure by establishing a government authority, like in Trinidad, with their Environment Management Authority. So yes, you can always drop in the example right there, which regulates and spearheads initiatives towards passing acts with punitive sanctions for overfishing. Furthermore, in law, more specifically, in statute, there can be a definite socially acceptable level which can be established and adhered to under the law. This will both de-incentivize and punish the act of overfishing. So that's how we talk about how it leads to correction. Okay. Taxation now refers to the application of a mandatory tariff or payment to be made on the event of a certain activity or infraction. In economics, taxes can either be applied either as a specific tax or as an ad valorem tax, that is a percentage tax. So either way, when applied to firms and individuals that practice overfishing, this will discourage them to overfish as the taxes would be dipping greatly into their profits earned. Furthermore, to correct the market failure, taxes collected are accumulated as government spending or expenditure, which can be used to improve the fishing industries by funding repopulation of the fish in Caribbean water bodies. So, with this, we can see that the taxes would first of all strip them of those excess profits that they would be gaining from overfishing. So they would just overfish because because of the prospect of getting more money. But aside from that, you can use that same money to re-inject it into that fishing industry by repopulating the water bodies and ensuring that the water bodies, will be able to get back the fish. So that's how we correct that market failure and also correct the negative externality because it's kind of de-incentivizes overfishing. Now, lastly, quotas. Quotas, which are essentially limits placed on the level of production that a firm can do, can also improve the reduction and correction of negative externalities. With the case of overfishing, a quota set at the socially optimal level of overfishing can reduce the welfare loss. Furthermore, with the integration of permits, in particular tradable permits, that's the term, tradable permits, that are used to license, that are issued to license fishermen and fishing firms, can optimize the quota system by having a limited number of permits issued each year. This overall restricts overfishing as fishermen and fishing firms are forced to be conscientious of their quota stipulated by the permits. So yeah, and also with tradable permits, you can have this type of economy going on where there's a buying and selling of permits based on the because sometimes a fisherman doesn't really need all of what he has on his permit, so he could be able to leverage that and get another person to buy that permit off of him. And this would overall still lead to less overfishing because there is still a restriction on the amount of fishes that can be caught. So yeah, moving on to distribution theory. So define each of the following terms. So marginal physical product, MPP, refers to the changes in total physical product when one extra unit of labor is added. In other words, it refers to the additional output produced from one extra unit of labor. So anything marginal, you always have to talk about additional or extra. Always remember that. So moving on to marginal revenue product. Marginal revenue product, MRP, refers to the additional revenue earned by utilizing a unit of a factor input. Oftentimes, the MRP is used for labor. That is the MRPL, which refers to or represents the extra revenue earned by hiring an additional worker. So we kind of show the application of the MRP to an actual factor input, which is labor. So explain how each of the following can impact the pricing of labor, which is wages. So first we have minimum wages. As we said before, minimum wages is a price floor, you know. So we're gonna have to explain price floor a little bit and also explain how it relates to minimum wages. Minimum wages refers to the lowest amount of monetary remuneration that employers legally must pay their workers periodically. So that means they must pay them this amount either monthly or yearly or whatever arrangement they have. They are obligated by law. Now, oftentimes the government implements minimum wages to act as a price floor in the labor market. The price floor as a minimum wage is oftentimes set above the established market wage rate. Right? So that's what we were talking about earlier with that market that we drew with the price floor above the equilibrium. Right? At the higher price, the pricing of labor is impacted as the wage rate is increased. This minimum wage increase in terms of pricing has negative implications on the firms. This is so as at the wage rate, the quantity demanded for labor falls as the wages as a cost of production increased, which caused the owners to lower their quantity demanded for labor while the quantity supplied by the households increased due to the prospects of earning more wages. So overall that would lead to a surplus, and this surplus would be seen as unemployment because think about it, with the minimum wage actually going above the market equilibrium, that is the point where the producers and the consumers are agreeing that the quantity supplied and demand should be at that same wage rate. If the market, if it's above that, that would go to show that there will be a higher wage rate. And remember, wages is almost like an expense. It is an expense to the firm. So if they are essentially incurring more expenses they will demand less workers because you don't want to be paying out so much wages to so much people, right? And additionally, this would lead to some form of retrenchment because you still need to keep your costs down because inflation is an ongoing thing in business. So you need to keep your costs down as much as possible, and especially seeing that the wages are going up, you need to cut some of the workers, some of that temporary staff that you had over the summer. Maybe you cut them off, you know, and you'd pay less wages. So overall, the demand for labor is gonna go down. However, people who did not want to do this job before, they're gonna say, wait, the price is higher, so let me show advertise myself for the job. So this would reflect as like an increase in quantity supplied, and that's true because the workers now in the labor market, the household, sorry, the individuals in the household would say, okay, now I want to offer my services to the labor market because the price is right at this point. So that's where you're gonna see that there's an increase in quantity supplied of laborers. The overall labor supply will increase because the wage rate is higher, but the quantity demanded will decrease because the firm itself is not gonna demand all of that, and that inequality between quantity supplied and a lower quantity demanded will give you what you call real wage unemployment. Yeah. So yeah, we move on to industrial action. Industrial action refers to the demonstrative measure taken by disgruntled workers in response after collective bargaining has failed to low wages and or poor working conditions. So with industrial actions like strikes, go slows, sit-ins. So strikes are essentially when you demonstrate in a public space your disgruntled attitude with the wage or the poor working conditions. Or go slows is essentially where you actually do work, but you work at a slower pace, and you try to like extract as much concessions as possible, like essentially diminish the productivity in that industrial action. And you can also do a sit-in where essentially you are at the workplace, you are reporting for work, but you're not doing anything at all for the entire day. So yeah, that is how industrial action can be utilized as a response to mm, unfavorable collective bargaining. Yeah. So the employers stand to lose with these industrial action measures. They stand to lose considerable productivity, as with these industrial actions, there tends to be little to no work taking place until until the employer finds some form of action to remedy the idiosyncrasies of the workers. So if it's that they want an increased wage, if they want, better working conditions, more coffee, I don't know, but whatever they want. So as a result, we're gonna focus back on wages though. We're gonna say as a result, the workers or the employer, in a bid to not lose out on any more productive hours, he will go to satisfy them, usually by raising their wages. However, note that employers can also use their industrial action, and that's in the form of lockouts, which is where the workers will report again for duty, but this time the employer closed the door, then unable to actually go in and work. So and that from that way, the employer would probably start using capital or use different staff altogether to get his production done, but he's locking out those actual workers who are disgruntled with the lowered wage rates. So that's a way of like getting them to conform. So I have it right here. So lockouts can help the employers in getting workers to conform with lowered wages by denying them employment until they adhere to the decreased wage rate. Yeah. So, lastly, collective bargaining. So, collective bargaining is facilitated through the use of a trade union with a trade unionist who represents the workers and negotiates for an increase in wages. So, with the trade union utilizing collective bargaining, the workers possess more bargaining power due to the fact that the trade unionist is negotiating for most, if not all, of the workers. That gives them strength in numbers, and especially this is especially true if you're gonna talk about like something like a clothes shop, where essentially to join this certain industry, everybody needs to be a part of the union. So, uh, for example, say for example maybe the teachers, maybe teachers, they probably need, if they wanted to, they could operate like a clothes operate as a clothes shop, where in order to become a teacher you have to be a part of the teachers union, and as a result, with the collective bargaining they'll be able to include every teacher in the industry to give them that power to actually leverage against the employer. So, yes, this impact of collective bargaining often results in a wage increase, which puts the market in a shortage because the employers can't manage to pay so many workers at the higher wage rate. Therefore, most workers are retrenched as the employer reduces their quantity demanded for labor. Additionally, like with the minimum wage, the excess supply or surplus of workers is amplified by the fact that more workers will offer their labor to the market as the wage rate is higher. It was very similar to what we discussed earlier with the minimum wage, yes. So, okay, we reached the last part of the exam. That is C. Discuss how each of the following factors could affect the economic cost of poverty. So we have one, unemployed human resources, two, inefficiency of government spending, and three, environmental degradation. Yeah. So we always like to start off with our definition, that is poverty, because that's really what we're looking at right here. Poverty refers to the state of deprivation by individuals, and the factor of unemployed human resources often amplifies the economic costs of poverty in regards to one's skill level, education level of education, sorry, and standard of living. With with a high volume of unemployed resources, it is self-evident that unemployed people in society, in order to function, have to either one, utilize their savings, or in more dire circumstances when there's no savings available, you have to depend on the generosity of your own family members. This is due to the fact that workers are unemployed, and if you're unemployed, you're unable to earn a real income to fund your lifestyle and moves towards upper social and economic mobility. So we're talking about like education, talking about like skill development, things of that nature. That's what I mean by upward socioeconomic mobility. So this speaks to the fact that the impoverished are often unskilled, and they facilitate overcrowding. So again, because of the inability to actually go get yourself a education, especially at the tertiary level where it is not heavily subsidized in the Caribbean, and it facilitates overcrowding in the sense that where you possibly have to live with your family members, because you either depend on your savings or the generosity of your family members, and that would furthermore allow that would put a drain on the family's resources as well, because you wouldn't be contributing, you'd only be utilizing your family's resources. So we go back now. So the inability permanent to acquire permanent employment due to a grave lack in skills and academic qualifications aids the growth of a nation's unemployed human resources, which leads to greater occurrences of crime and violence in the country, as the impoverished population is left destitute and hopeless. And this overall can lead to a decrease in the standard of living. So, furthermore, I explain to say that as a nation can be overrun by criminal elements and corruption, so much so that it harms economic growth due to the nation being blacklisted. And this is particularly true for Jamaica because, we're talking about our tourism sector, which is one of our most lucrative sectors right now because we don't really have much stake in the agricultural sector like before. But yes, this is particularly impactful because there are, like travel advisors and things like that, where there's travel advisory saying that we're high risk as a country, and this would overall be a deterrent to, to tourists coming into the country, and allowing for us to gain some foreign exchange, and overall it just decreases our opportunities for profits. And as I have right here, it is felt in Caribbean nations like Jamaica and her tourism sector, which is seen as a high risk destination for tourists due to the huge or high volume of economic crime such as robbery and lotto scamming, often perpetuated by the same impoverished people, because these people, as I said before earlier, are left destitute and hopeless due to the fact that they're unskilled, and they are often, penny pinching in terms of probably going into savings or depending solely on their families to fund their lifestyles. So next we're going to look at the inefficiency of government spending. So this is so as the state or the government does have an obligation towards upholding the general welfare of people in a nation, and we look towards the fact that the government has a fiscal budget where there are tasks in the form of development initiatives and projects which are funded by the government aimed at improving the welfare for all members of society. So these projects could include road repair, street light provision, establishment of proper civil water provision systems, and other things for the overall benefit of society. However, due to the issue of having a highly impoverished population, direct financial provisions have to go in the form of grants, welfare benefits, unemployment relief, and I'm pretty sure we're more aware of this because of the whole COVID pandemic, with the fact that people had been receiving grants because of the just overall being ravaged by the pandemic. So we see welfare benefits coming out, unemployment and all that. So people would be poverty stricken by even the pandemic, and this is also true in this scenario as well in terms of poverty. So being poverty stricken forces the government to actually assist if there's so much of the society suffering from it, and it depletes the budget while also taking some welfare away from the greater good of society, as the government has to redirect their spending inefficiently towards poverty alleviation. So instead of like doing all of these lovely projects that I spoke about, instead of fixing the roads, instead of fixing the lights and ensuring that we have running water and all of that, they have to go instead and look towards just individuals who are poverty stricken, which is a major issue, and issue out the funding towards that. And those things get put on the back burner, which reduces welfare for other people who need streetlights, other people who need roads and things of that nature. So overall, the society does not get the full benefit it should. So there is the bright side though of the government using the expenditure to wisely train the unemployed, impoverished people and gear them up for employment, sorry, which is overall beneficial to the economic development of the nation. The Heart Trust NSTA in Jamaica is one of such skill and development programs, which is highly state subsidized and which allows for more Jamaicans to become employed and actually escape poverty. So there's a good and a bad side. So you always have to talk about that when you're discussing. You have to talk about the fact that yes, it can be inefficient in the sense that the government really isn't looking at the bigger picture in terms of other welfare, the welfare of the entire society as a whole. But overall, if they still dedicate some funds to those people who are impoverished and use it wisely on things such as skill development, which will allow for them to become employed and then contribute to society, it would still work out because we'd have a more productive society, which is one of the major aims for any economy, any government. And lastly, we have environmental degradation. So, environmental degradation is another economic cost of poverty, stemming back to the point of poverty, putting up putting a group of individuals in a state of deprivation due to an inability to earn a functional real income. Environmental degradation is most likely to occur as the impoverished members of society are in dire need of a means to make a living and cover their expenses. This is why there's many instances of environmental degradation due to overfishing, soil exhaustion, and deforestation. And this is often due to inexperience and a lack of technical expertise regarding, the overall sustainability of the harmful practices and long-term adverse impacts on economic on ecosystems and ultimately the future environment for the new generation. So essentially we're looking at the fact that these people would go into agriculture, something that is feasible for them at the time, but due to the fact that they're not aware of how to truly do it properly and the fact that they probably need to make as much money as they possibly can, so they tend to overfish, they tend to exhaust the soil and basically just lead to environmental degradation, and without knowing that there is you know greater implications in terms of a decrease in like the ecosystem, and this would overall make the nation a worse place in the long run. So again, through the use of education in the form of training and development programs and agricultural conventions, the impoverished can learn how to sustainably earn a living, so that is in ways that can continue not just today, you not just fish for today, but also like learn how to do the fishing in a way that you can fish for the next few years and also generations after you. So this is, they have to learn how to sustainably earn a living through agriculture and have an acute understanding of the implications that this same agricultural work has on the environment. Furthermore, through education, environmental degradation will be reduced while also providing an avenue for the impoverished to become employed and earn a wage above the poverty line. So, yes, that's the entire paper. So, I'll end off here by saying I do hope that you have learned something today. Please remember that the opportunity cost to learn is zero. So raise your demand for excellence.